This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
And just a reminder, if you're going out to vote in the southwest part of Port St. Lucie, keep in mind 2 precincts have been moved because of the large turnout. One is Oakhammock School, K through 8, will replace Faith Congregational Church. And of course, obviously, stay socially distant. And precinct 50, right next to it, Treasure Coast High School is going to replace Robert Minsky Gym. So those 2 changes for our St. Lucie elections. Time now for Money Info, brought to you by the great Wize, Mr. Charles Moskowitz. Good morning, sir.
How are you?
Doing fine. How are you?
Good. And we have Dennis with us today, Dennis Marlowe. He's, I've introduced him before, and if you read my letter or even my closing or opening comments, you'll hear that Dennis is probably the best futures trader I've ever met.
Yeah, and I can see
especially
him.
In gold and silver.
Yep, I can see him dancing because gold is up $16 already this morning.
Well, yeah, Charles, I got to acknowledge something, that a really genuine thing. I listen to your commentary twice a day, and it's so wonderful. You don't read a teleprompter. You actually talk from experience with good common sense, good street sense, and you tell people really what's happening.
Yeah.
So that's why I want you to know how much I look forward to it twice a day.
Oh, thanks. I just can't afford a writer. Anyway, a little bit of housekeeping here. We closed out our CVS position with a profit. I just felt like I wanted to sell into the strength this morning because I think a lot of what's gone on in the last couple of days on the upside is going to be tomorrow characterized as bought the rumor, sold the news. And the CVS calls, which were down from about $1.20 where we originally bought them, I averaged those down on Thursday of last week and reduced the average to about 80 cents, and we sold them at 101. It wasn't a massive profit, but that's just the way that I play it. I tend to be a little bit of a contrarian, and I like to buy the support when nobody wants them and sell when everybody wants them. Another thing that we did just this morning, and this is all really about if you do your homework and you know what you like, then you can be ready when something happens. So I really like the nat gas market right here. It's down very hard. Next week, we'll be doing this in a manner that I can actually show you the charts and things that I'm looking at so that you'll see. But nat gas went down this morning pretty hard, and I was looking for it to go to about 306, 307, maybe 308, down from the 317 or so it closed yesterday. Well, that happened, and I bought calls on UNG. UNG is the U.S. Natural Gas Fund, so that's an ETF. And they closed yesterday at 73 cents. We just paid 45 cents for them. It works or it doesn't work, but because I bought them when nobody wants them, if it does work, we'll see a profit pretty quickly.
Charles, is natural gas down just because of all the political footballing that's been taking place?
It's kind of funny. I think Dennis, I'll just give you my opinion, but I think Dennis is much more well-versed on this. When the price of oil and the distillates, gasoline, heating oil, etc., when the prices of those go up, theoretically, there's more production. When there's more production, on oil and those distillates, nat gas tends to move down because there's a lot of nat gas around. So if there's going to be less oil production, there's going to be less natural gas. I mean, natural gas is so cheap that in a lot of places they do what's called flaring it. They just burn it because it's just not economical to capture it, compress it, and ship it. But nat gas is also a great deal like um, some of the other commodities where, there's just that inverse relationship between one of the byproducts and what they're actually looking for.
I remember about 10 years ago when you and Mike had on a petroleum expert who was talking about burning off natural gas in the fields of West Texas. And they've been doing that for years, I guess.
Yeah, and more specifically, um, part of the issue is that nat gas has two markets, sort of like sugar. Now, Greg, you know what sugar costs in Florida for production and what it's worth. Outside the US, it's almost double the price. And so now that we have companies like Tellurian, which is just being built out, and LNG, which is the original Cheniere, who are actually moving and compressing and shipping out of the US, prices around the world are dramatically higher. I don't know, Dennis can tell you. I don't know whether they're double or triple or up 50% or whatever, but I will tell you, I know that they're higher outside the US. Dennis, is that accurate?
Yeah, I compliment you. I bought some futures today with about a $200 risk. That's what made it interesting. I think the thing, gentlemen, with natural gas is the best thing for low prices is low prices. When things get low, that's usually they get close to turning. So let's say with the farmer, he could plant soybeans or he could plant corn. If corn is way down in price, he plants soybeans, and then there's not enough corn around come the next harvest year. I think we're going into the winter here, and if we were to have a cold winter, which I think is happening with the sunspots, I think natural gas certainly has a lot of validity here with a small risk. But the thing is, I live in Colorado, and in October we had 0-degree temperature already. So I think we're going to have a cold winter because of the sunspots. Okay. Anyway, what they have here, Greg and Charlie, what are we here? We're on a Kool-Aid kick here? What the heck is going on? Are they out of their mind? I mean, you see, I have a problem because I'm just an old timer. And when I had traded, I had owned a seat on one of the regional exchanges when I was 27. At that time, I was the youngest person to ever have it. We really work with common sense. And the one thing that you have to realize that with all the noise, in the long term, we're all dead. And I don't believe in going to the church or buy and hold. However, in the medium term, what determines stock prices is the price earnings ratios, the PE. And right now, we're probably overall in the upper 20s when we should be at 15. We have very solid companies like Microsoft, et cetera, selling at over 30 Ps. And that's the reason why when the earnings have been coming out, which Wall Street construes them to be pretty good because they set the bar so low, the stocks haven't reacted well. They actually have gone down on what they call, hey, Charlie, I got to tell you something. Just today, your friends on one of the major business stations, Greg, one of them is talking about gold bullion. That's a soup. That's not gold. Another guy who I'm not really that fond of, I won't mention his name, you try to figure it out.
Don't say Kramer.
Yeah, well, he says the Chinese market is booming, and yet the Chinese market is on the lows of the last 3 months, okay? And it's down about, the Chinese market's not booming. Now, understand, I went to China a lot. The Chinese are, in my opinion, are the finest gold traders in the world. They're smart. They plan 100 years out. And when I would go there, Greg, almost every time they would say to me, "You're lying." I said, "What do you mean I'm lying? Why do you think I'm lying?" They said, "Because we lie all the time. It's in our culture," and it happens to be true.
Well, they've only got a few thousand years experience of trading gold in China.
Yeah, but they're good. They're so good in gold trading. The Swiss are probably one of the worst. But the Chinese, oh no, the Swiss are maybe the worst in my opinion. But the Chinese, they plan 100 years out. Unfortunately, in our wonderful country that I love, we plan what's going to happen the next 2 hours. And you see, I taught my children, and they're beginning to understand this as they got older, that maturity is taking short-term pain for long-term happiness. Children don't do that, as you know, right? As we get older, and now they're starting to see that. And what we're doing here in this country, we're printing all this money. It's horrifying. But look, Charlie, I want your opinion. I think what is happening here today and in the last week is the bonds are getting really sloppy. Interest rates are hardening. I mean, the bonds are down on was it close to the low of the year?
Yeah.
In other words, yields are going up.
Right.
And that may be the black swan. And the dollar is collapsing. Now, the thing is, and Charlie, you and I feel the same way, I think, about this. What shows the health of a country is not the stock market, it's the currency.
Yep.
Because the currency takes every facet into place. It looks at deficits, both internationally and domestically. It looks at all the problems. And why, Charlie, is the dollar so sloppy and spongy when we have one of the, now, even though our interest rates on a 10-year note's only, about 0.85, that's still higher than almost all of Asia and all of Europe, right?
Yep. And yet people don't understand that the Fed does not really control anything but the shortest of interest rates. They have no control whatsoever over the 10-year or 30-year or the 20-year notes. I mean, all they can do is decrease short-term rates. But here's the problem. The problem has become that we have all these huge deficits, and this is just economics 101. When you have these kind of deficits, you have to finance them. When you have to finance them, you're putting more supply in the market. And I don't know about you and Greg, but when I went to school, they said when there's an oversupply, prices go down. And when there's an undersupply, prices go up. Well, you have to remember that interest rates are the opposite of that. When interest rates go up, the bonds are going down. And when it's funny, we think about the reports. There's a guy from Chicago on CNBC, one of the brightest guys I've ever seen, and he does not read a teleprompter. He tells you the way it is. And he's like you, Dennis, in that he has a lot of experience being on the floor and seeing the trading and having a better understanding of it. But what happens with him is he grades auctions. So if there's an auction of short term, he tells you what the bid to cover is, which is basically the demand and at what levels, etc., and then how the market reacts after that's done. And the funny thing is that you have to understand when he's talking about an auction, he might be talking about 20 or 25 or 30 or $35 billion worth of notes or bonds. But the deficit that needs to be financed is multiple trillions of dollars. So, even a auction that goes off well, that he rates an A or a B, is still a tiny, tiny piece of what we actually need. I mean, I'm kind of surprised because, the Fed has had an opportunity here to close out some of those trades because the prices have been so high. And further, they should be, if they really, and this goes back to Dennis's comment about China, if they really believe that rates are low, then they ought to be doing 50-year bonds or 100-year bonds. There are actually corporations, one in your backyard, Cliff, who has a 100-year bond issue. It's Disney. And Disney is certainly, as good as they are, not on the same par with the Fed and its ability to have an open balance sheet. But nonetheless, a couple of years ago, they saw rates as low and financing whatever they needed to finance, because unlike, the little companies who everything is this quarter or next quarter, Disney thinks like China thinks, because they've been around so long and they look at the long end. They just said, just rates are cheap. We're going to issue this bond. And the public loved it. And
Yeah.
it's not an 8 or 10% bond, Greg. It's small single digits.
Wow. The thing that interests me is I was watching a little bit of the Bloomberg Asia report. How does the rest of the world view our Fed? It doesn't seem like they respect us very much.
There's a simple answer to that. And I'm not being biased, okay? I'm just an old soul, okay? I've been around a long time. If you want to know what they think of our Fed, you look at the currency. Now, there's only two markets that can't be manipulated. The currency market is 4 trillion with a T every 24 hours. The currency market, 4 trillion. Now, when Carl Sagan years ago looked up at the stars, he told us that there's a billion stars there. He knew there was a trillion, but he said people are not going to be able to relate to a trillion. So he says there's a billion. 4 trillion a day. Now, but the dollar trades against every other currency, the Israeli shekel, the euro dollar, the yen, and everyone in the world today, Greg, has problems with printing monies and terrorist problems, and of course this virus pandemic and terrorists, and yet we are falling apart. I mean, now, I couldn't believe what happened to the bond market last Friday. Now, this is probably going to be the black swan. And when I was in college, university, I had a history professor named Judd, and he was very friendly with James Michener. And one of the best books I ever read was You Never Trust the Obvious. And that's what happened with Brexit. The Brexit 4 years ago in the UK, they thought it would never, I mean, things happen that you don't really expect. But if you want to really get a handle on this, watch the bond market, which the bond vigilantes are now there. What do you think, Charlie, right? The vigilantes are. And the other thing, too, is with the stock market, besides the high P's, I was taught by smart people, if they could manipulate a market, they know where stops are, they know how to do that. But what they can't do is do the volume. And when stocks go down on higher volume than up days, that means stocks are being distributed. And when they go up on higher volume, it means they're being accumulated. Now, just today, we had a report that the insiders in the last 2 years are not buying stocks. And the insiders know a lot more than the brokers on the 67th floor of the building with their alligator shoes and their $3,000 suits. What do you think? What do you think, Charlie?
Yeah, I agree. And but everything that you said falls under the category of, because you're so old,
That's correct.
it's never different.
Touche.
And as anyone who's ever listened to me before or read any of my work, one of the cliches that I often use, and let's face it, cliches are cliches because they work, because they do tell the truth. But my favorite is everybody is never right. When everybody thinks anything, they're wrong. They're just wrong. And and
You
along
mean
with
kind of like election polls? Oh,
yeah,
I'm
right,
sorry.
exactly. Um, and the everybody is never right leads to just contrary ideas, because these things have been in place and have worked for years and years and years because they work. It's just that simple. And you get one more thing I'll say before I'll let you ask another question, Greg. The fact of the matter is that from the everyone is never right point of view, you also can't really listen to these pundits, even the good ones, forgetting about the teleprompter readers on Fox News or CNBC. I'm talking about people who have really been well accomplished over the years. And the fact is, you get a better read from 100 men or women, didn't mean to hit that, you get a better read from 100 or 200 individuals than you will ever get from 5 or 10 experts. They just don't know.
Right. Charlie, that's so true. Greg, if I could just interject something here. The only constant that we have is that human nature never change. It's greed, it's fear, and it's impatience. Now, do you know what the biggest fear that most people have? You probably won't get it.
Well,
And
now?
this is not, no, the biggest fear people have is loneliness. And that's why women live longer. Women can cope with loneliness a lot better than we men, okay?
No,
But
us dudes cannot. We just can't.
but here's another thing. The hardest thing for us to accept, including me to some extent, probably less than most people, is change. CHANGE. When real estate collapses, as it did in 2008, it's never going to go back up. When the S&P got down to 666, it's never, and now we have a situation where people don't realize that we probably have a good chance that we're now in a bear, BEAR stock market. We've had a 13-year bull market that was manipulated to a great extent with gap earnings and non-gap earnings and buybacks and inflated P's. It's really, I never seen something so manipulated. A bull market of 13 years eventually turns into a bear market. I think it might have started already with so many stocks. However, a bear market historically lasts about 35% of a bull market time-wise. So if we started a bear market, It means where the market was in most stocks 2-3 months ago, we may not get back there for 4 or 5 years, except change. That's why we change the seasons.
Yeah,
That's why we change the time calendars.
and frankly, that goes for something else because I know, which means that Dennis knows, which means that Greg knows, that when we're in a recession, before it is, quote, called a recession, we can drive around, we can see the empty stores in strip malls or the empty parking lots in a big mall or whatever, and we know we're in a recession. Just the guys who call it have no clue. By the time they tell you we're in a recession, we're actually particularly hard hit. And so, that's another one of those human nature things where if you listen to the little narrator in your head and you see these things, they are in fact there. And that goes back to the same, 5 or 10 experts can't tell you what 100 people can because they see it, because they feel it. You know what the difference between a recession and a depression is, Greg. In a recession,
Yeah.
your neighbor loses his job. In depression, you lose your job.
You lose it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. I got a question for both of you then. It's election day. Does it really make any difference who wins a presidential election?
Well, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. However, unfortunately, and I'm not cynical or negative. I mean, but I'm a realist. I've been studying countries since I've been 25 years old. And as you know, countries historically last only about 250 years. We had Portugal in the 1400s, and then they passed the baton to Spain. Spain became the powerhouse. Then we passed the baton to the Netherlands. Greg, we had a tulipomania. They
The
were
who?
the
The Netherlands.
Yeah, they were buying tulip bulbs for $5,000 a flower. They made it, with their spices and oil and things like that.
Sure, sure.
Then we went into my father's country, the UK. It was the powerhouse of the world. They said the sun never sets on the British Empire. They rule the waves, and they're all still around, but not the same. Then we became the powerhouse of the world. We were the greatest country in the world, and we're going to be around. But the reason that we cannot get back to where we were before is the corruption. See, with age and years, corruption destroys a country. And the one country that doesn't really have as much corruption, which we can't go into now, is one of my favorite countries in the world, and that's Singapore. That's another story. So what we're looking at here right now is that, you have to accept change, and days go to night, and winter goes to spring, and after great times. See, what all they're doing, Greg, is putting a pillow under a terminal illness. I mean, you're in a hospital, you have a terminal illness. So they got two choices. They can give you more heroin and more cocaine, and you get a high from it, right? I never did drugs, but that's what I hear. And then you got to inject more to get the same high. But eventually, doesn't the body die? And this is what governments do. Again, this is being realistic. Governments will go out and do the easiest thing instead of letting the recession happen. Recessions are healthy. It cleans out the whole system. And we should have let the recession happen. If we would have let it happen in 2008 with the financial crisis and had the recession happen, we would have been so much stronger today because we didn't really have a good economy. I mean, look, let's look at this. I'm sorry that you think I'm biased. The NASDAQ was 5,000 back in 2000, 5,000, all right? And now it's 11,000, right? A little more than a double. If that's about 5%, 6% a year before inflation. Now, let me tell you about something that's only good for your teeth, the gold market. The gold market was about 230 and it went above 2,000, which is 8 times. So which is better, going up 8 times or doubling? So as Charlie had said with natural gas today, I think the two markets, in my opinion, that have the best risk reward, and Charlie agrees. We don't agree in everything, but Charlie's really smart. When he agrees with me and I agree with him, we feel better, is the natural gas market and the gold market. But you don't know something about gold. You'll never hear this from Jim Cramer. Maybe the greatest bull market, and I've been studying, I went back to 1600, where there was no future markets. So I studied the price of wheat, which they had then. The gold market is the only market in the world that I know of, and there may be something, which I'm aware of, that went up 12 years in a row. From the early, yes, that's a fact,
Wow.
not opinion. Since the early 2000s, when it got down to about 235, check your chart, it went up every year for 12 years. Now, we know Apple went up, and we know Amazon, and we know the house in Malibu, California went up, but it didn't go up 12 years in a row. So what happened was...
Wait a minute, my house in the Marina Del Rey has gone up. Well, never mind.
Has it really?
It's
right.
ridiculous. You know, I remember when Carol and I bought this condo, and we were in our 40s, I guess, and it was like 300 or something. I forget what it was. We were making good money in LA. It's now $1.5 million.
It's nice to be rich.
Yeah, well, we sold it, unfortunately, but oh my goodness. And they haven't done anything to it. It's amazing.
Yeah. But the thing is that you know why gold doesn't pay any interest?
No.
Because it doesn't have to. and you know the golden rule, the one who owns the gold makes the rules. Now, I'm not a gold bug. I don't mean to be a braggadocio, but I have one of the finest records ever trading gold. In fact, Barron's gave me an honor to write a whole full page for them on trading gold around the world.
Wow.
Now, right? Yeah, no, I mean, I can send you, Charlie can send you the reprint. But the thing is that the gold now is going to Russia and China and the Far East. You see, the Western world, which is going to be here, and I live in the Western world. I love America, and I love Europe. My parents are from Europe. The Western world will never be the same with the Far East, because of their education and their infrastructure and their work ethics. Kids go to school for 14 hours a day, 10, 11 months a year, is going to become the powerhouse of the world.
Discipline. That's what it is.
Yeah,
discipline.
It's true. That's
and
true.
Family structure.
But you know, I'm blessed by the Lord. We're living, I don't like to see what's going to happen here, but we're living the most interesting times. But do me a favor. I studied Stalin and Pol Pot and Hitler and Chavez. I've been studying since I've been 25. That's the thing I like the most. You know what Pol Pot did? Pol Pot out of Cambodia was a pretty good man. And then he went to Paris and he learned how to become a Marxist. He went back to Cambodia and he killed 25 million people who wore glasses like you and I, because he said if they wear glasses, they know what's going on. I don't want them to know what's going on. So what you got to do, and I pray I'm wrong, is read, everybody out there, I hope I'm wrong, should read about the kulaks under Stalin. That's with a K, kulaks. Just Google it. That's where I feel we're headed for in America now.
Whoa.
Well, no, I mean, but read it. You'll see.
Yeah, okay.
Greg, it never changes. Human nature always has greed and fear and pornography and drugs. And that's the one constant that we have is human nature.
And by the way, Greg, in answer to your question from my point of view about elections, they really don't mean much. I mean, you know, Trump and Biden, you know, you want the liar that you know or the one that you don't. I mean, they're all liars and thieves, politicians in particular. And the other thing is that there are three separate sections of the government. And you have an executive, and he's just the same as the executive who runs ExxonMobil or, you know, any company. But he has to answer to his board. And so there's that in place. So it can't get too outrageous. And the Senate and the House obviously have the ability to legislate and to discuss when they're not wasting their time on whether or not Facebook has been a monopoly, or, you know, why Jack Dorsey is running two separate companies, Square and Twitter, and wasting all of our money and time. But the fact is, the election really doesn't make a lot of difference. And up here in Massachusetts, it absolutely doesn't make a difference. I mentioned this one night last week or the week before as my narrative in the weekly letter, that, you know, it just doesn't matter at all as long as there are some checks and balances. But people really don't. The senators and the Congress people, they really don't represent my feelings, my personal feelings. So they're not actually representing me. Besides that, I live in Massachusetts. The last two presidents that got Massachusetts, who are not Democrats, were Ronald Reagan and Dwight Eisenhower. So my vote doesn't really count for much here in Massachusetts. On the other hand, something that I heard just in the last couple of days, you know, really helps me make some choices. And that is, there's probably no way that Elizabeth Warren is going to end up Treasury Secretary. And the reason is pretty simple. And it just shows you how screwed up politics are. We have a Republican governor here in Massachusetts. And how these Republican governors keep on getting elected is just beyond me. Before this one, there was Mitt Romney. Before him, there was Weld. I mean, they're all Republicans, and it just doesn't, I just can't figure it out. But the bottom line is that our Republican governor will replace Elizabeth Warren by appointment, and that will cost them a Senate seat, which at this point they cannot afford to give away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so, you know, now I feel better. I won't feel better in 2022, because at that point she'll be running, or somebody else strong will be running, and it'll be a toss-up. It'll either be a Republican or a Democrat. But between now and 2022, she's here. There's no way they give up a seat.
All right, listen, let me give Charlie, your listeners, the thought of the day, and I'm pretty adamant about this. It's pretty profound, okay?
Yep.
There are no smart people around anymore. We're in a scenario we never had. Even I think I'm smarter than most, but I'm not smart either. So the key now, Greg and Charlie, is to diversify. I'm in 19 different investments. I'm in different countries. When you're in the stock market and you're taking different sectors, etc., that's not diversifying because, Charlie, you know, when they raid the girly house, even the piano player comes out, right?
Right.
So when the market goes down, there are a couple of things that fight the market. But when the market goes down, almost everything goes down. Now, futures, which you think I'm biased on, which are 30 different things in the world, that's one of the diversifications. Plus, I think everybody should have a foreign bank account. I do. I pay all the taxes on it. But it's always good to have money out of your country, too. But we can't go into that now.
Well, I don't need any of that, Dennis, because I have you, and I know there's room in your home for me to move.
Well, you're really kind. You're really
Well,
kind.
and
But
besides, Dennis is in the marijuana capital of the world, Colorado.
is that? I thought it was up around in California, Mendocino or so. I thought that was. Well,
Oh,
Well, that's where the black market was.
yeah, well, it
Well,
still
Greg,
is.
This is what they did. Do you know how the Forbes family made all their money? They sold opium to the Chinese. That's how they got rich. That's
What?
true. Yeah, that's a fact. Greg, just please, you're a bright
The
guy.
Forbes family.
Yes. No, yeah, his family. You see, I'm sure you can separate my opinion from fact. On my opinion, I could be wrong, and I'm wrong
Okay.
sometimes. But that's where they made most of it. You dumb them down. So my friend, who I dislike vehemently, George Soros, who should be thrown out of the country, deported, okay? He was the one, if you give them the marijuana, which is, by the way, more dangerous than most drugs, you destroy their minds. You know what used to be what was funny when I had a seat way back? The broker from one of the and I don't mean to be down on Wall Street, because Wall Street, you can make a lot of money in Wall Street, but it's really for them, not for us. The broker calls up Jake and says, hey, listen, do me a favor, take a Prozac or a Valium. I'll call you back an hour later. He calls him back an hour later. He says, I want you to buy this XYZ stock. And right now your mind's a little bit befuddled from the Prozac and the Valium, okay? But I mean, you see, the thing is when you go with the crowds, you can make money. And I've gone with the crowds, but you know how you make more money? You go against the crowds. And that's why in the last year or two, where I missed a lot of the updrafts in the market, which I did, I thought it was better to be out. And I wish I had caught some of the updrafts. I caught all the downdrafts. And I made more monies on the downdrafts than people made being in the market. You know, I think I've done 4 times what the S&P has done. So that's it. But I'm just an old soul, Greg.
Okay. Well, you know, you guys both mentioned about, you know, the dear old temperature changes. You know, we're in the depths of winter down here. It's not even going to get to be 75 today.
It snowed 6 inches here Friday. Friday, it was, oh yeah, no, it's only going to snow north and west of 495, which is kind of a distance from where I'm sitting right now. And you're probably only going to get rain. And I woke up to about an inch of snow. Oh, and by the way, it's definitely not going to stick because the ground is still warm. 6 inches later, it was when I went out on Saturday morning, the doors of my car were frozen shut. So
wow,
there are some pretty ugly changes.
Hey,
And it's supposed to be 70 on Saturday.
I don't know if you guys remember 1970 Time magazine, and 1970 was not the dinosaur age. I remember 1970. There was no dinosaurs roaming Florida or Massachusetts. Time magazine.
No, we were roaming around Santa Barbara at the time.
Oh, yeah, it's a nice place to roam around. Okay, they had on the cover the coming ice age. It's all with sunspots. When the volcano blows in Iceland, which it does, it puts more crap in the air than 20 years of all the trucks and the cars in the world.
Whoa. Okay.
No, that's a fact. You know, when the and talking about the ice age, they had 5 scientists who went up to the North Pole, and then they go down into the ice, and you could see how cold it is. I mean, it's just, see, nature is wonderful. I'm very spiritual, by the way. I probably pray more than most people. I mean, I love the Lord, and I love people who are spiritual. And the thing is, you just disease people's minds. You see, like Goebbels said, if you tell a big enough lie often and often, people are going to begin to believe you.
I think we heard that in this campaign, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one more thing, and I'll go quick. And, you know, we're really, you know, in the spirit of having fun today, what's going on in the world. And when I was 9 years of age, my father was a captain during World War II. He came from Britain, became an American when he was 12, and he killed 48 Germans, which he hated doing. But he said, you know, son, if they're going to put a bomb on my mother's house, I'm going to put it in the house first. When I was 9 years of age, my parents went out and they ate 2 pounds of butter. My parents came back, and my father said, who ate the butter? I said, the cat. I lied. My father took me into the library, and he was a great man, and he looked at me and said, son, I know that unintentionally I'm going to disappoint you as life goes on, and I know that you're going to unintentionally disappoint me, but I don't want you to lie, because liars are worse than thieves. All a thief could do is take all your assets. And that's why I'm really down on politics. I mean, they all lie.
Yep.
One lies more than the other.
Okay, just a couple of quick things before we go. And Greg or Dennis, whoever has the answer here, how many people do you think vote here, are registered and able to vote? Half the population?
Yeah, maybe about
150 million?
60 million.
Okay, so here's my thought on the election. They've spent $8.5 billion in media spend for this election. There's 150 million registered voters likely to vote about. I think they ought to just pay $57 for the votes, because that's what it works out for. And you get a more honest count, and it would be simple. I mean, 8.5 billion divided by 150 million is $56.66. And it's more honest.
Hey, wait a minute. You're killing our financial side here
Yeah.
with political business.
Yeah. Okay. So as we're winding up, I want to remind everyone that they can go to Great Wize Oz. That's www.greatwize with a Z and Oz with a Z. GreatWize.com. This will be posted there by tomorrow. You can also sign up for a free trial of what I put out, which now includes, as Greg mentioned, the morning and evening videos, pre-open and closing videos. I write a daily note Monday through Thursday. I don't write it on Friday because the market letter comes out on Sunday night. So if you're interested in that, that's where to go. You can also go to my money info site. That's C as in Charles, A as in Apple, M as in Mary, at moneyinfo, MONEYINFO dash LLC.com. You can reach me that way. And I will certainly be able to not only discuss futures trading or any other subjects, but I will also be able to introduce you to Dennis, who, as I've said, is probably the best trader I've ever met, and is allowing us the ability to trade futures. And so those are the two addresses. If need be, and you can't remember those, you can go to WPSL. All my information is there, including my phone number.
And Charlie, will you make a commitment and a promise for the team? Keep up your commentary. It makes my day. It's like my sugar.
I
You don't
hear
know how
that a lot.
No, Charlie, you don't know how much I look forward to it because you don't read a teleprompter. You just talk from your heart and soul.
That's right.
And you know, by the way, I just bought the January natural gas futures, one tick off the low. And you know, what makes it interesting is that we could be wrong. We're wrong sometimes. The risk is only 200. The upside could be 10 times that amount.
Right. All right, Greg.
Well, you know, the question I have for both of you guys, and we've got about 3 minutes left, this supposed Mideast peace accord, is it all have something to do with natural gas, and that there's some sort of a deal where they will not buy natural gas from Iran anymore and buy it from us? Is that what it's really all about?
Well, they're talking about that. And basically, I don't know that the Emirates or the other groups that are involved in that are really any threat to Israel. I mean, it's not like the Saudis or the, or Iranians on making that kind of concession. I mean, you're talking about two little countries there. And I think that's a lot of show. Or as they say in Texas, all hat and no cattle.
Charlie, that's true. One thing that you haven't probably read about, the Chinese put 8 of their aircraft into Taiwan airspace yesterday.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind, okay? Just understand
boy.
that Greg, they're with the Silk Road. They want to take the world over.
Yep.
And they probably will be the strongest military and the strongest economy, unfortunately, in the world down the road.
Oh boy, that's a sobering thought as we leave today. Wow. Hey guys, we've done it. Charles, Dennis, you guys are great. We'll see you next week.
All right, good seeing you, Greg. You're a great host. I appreciate you. All right.
Have a good one. Okay, Charles
too.
Moskowitz, GreatWizeOz.com. Just dial him up, or you can see him every day on WPSL.com website. You have a good day, everyone. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, webcaster to the world on TuneIn and Alexa.